Good morning and a warm welcome. Sage here for Kalkine TV, reporting to you live from Sydney, and you're watching the Global Markets Roundup. Let's dive into some key highlights and happenings from yesterday, starting with the US market. A gauge of global equities headed for its seventh consecutive month of gains on Tuesday, but stocks and the dollar traded flat on the day as weak economic data suggested slower growth ahead as investors await a US jobs report at the week's end. MSCI's All-Country World Index traded up 0.04%, on track for another closing record high and its seventh month of consecutive gains. Benchmark US indices closed lower on Tuesday, August 31st, after the blue-chip technology stocks retreated amid the coronavirus fears and new economic data showed declining consumer confidence. The S&P 500 fell 0.13% to 4,522.68. The Dow Jones shed 0.11% to 35,360.73. And the Nasdaq Composite Index fell 0.04% to 15,259.24. And the small cap Russell 2000 gained 0.34% to 2,273.77. Delta virus fears weighed on traders' sentiments Tuesday. In addition, investors took cues from the latest consumer confidence data released by the Conference Board, a non-profit market research organisation. And according to its data, consumer confidence dropped to 113.8 points in August from 125.1 in July, the steepest fall since February, indicating a sharp drop in consumer spending. Also, the Housing Price Index for the Federal Housing Finance Agency jumped 18.8% year over year in June. It said on Tuesday. The index rose 17.4% in the second quarter compared to the year-ago quarter, driven by increasing demand and limited supplies. Real estate and consumer stocks were the biggest gainers on S&P 500. Healthcare and technology stocks were the bottom movers. The index recorded its seventh consecutive monthly gains in August, marking its longest winning streak since January 2018. Moving on now to the futures and commodities. Gold futures were up 0.29% to reach $1,817 per ounce. Silver decreased by 0.22% to $23 per ounce, while copper fell 0.19% to $4.3673. Brent oil futures decreased by 0.84% to $71.62 per barrel, and WTI crude was down 0.98% to $68.53. Looking at the bond markets now. The 30-year Treasury bond yields was up 1.44% to 1.926, while the 10-year bond yields rose 1.93% to 1.309. US dollar futures index increased by 0.01% to $92.657. And now it's time for a small break, but do stay tuned. I'll be back with the Asia and Australian market updates next. Hi, I'm Sage, and get ready to take the crypto ride with me on Kalkine TV. Watch the Crypto Buzz every Tuesday and join the excitement at Kalkine TV. From Bitcoins to NFTs to Dogecoin and DeFi, we have updates about everything around these digital currencies. Understand the investing rationale and the risks involved in the space with me, Sage, on Crypto Buzz. Keep watching Kalkine TV. Welcome back, I'm Sage. You're watching the Global Markets Roundup show. The European stocks fell on Tuesday as a spike in inflation caused jitters about a possible shift in the monetary policy, but nevertheless rose nearly 2% in August on strong quarterly earnings and optimism over an economic recovery. The Pan-European Stock 600 index closed 0.4% lower, but marked a seventh straight month of gains in its best monthly winning streak since 2013. And the London markets traded on a mixed note after the release of weak Chinese factory data. According to the latest figures from the Bank of England, the mortgage approvals had dropped from 80,272 in June 2021 to 75,152 during July 2021. Computacenter shares went up by about 3.8% after the company stated in an unscheduled trading update that the financial year 21 adjusted pre-tax profit would remain around 10% ahead of the prior year. FTSE 100 listed Bunzl shares dropped by around 2.09%, even after the company had reported a significant growth in top-line revenue and adjusted pre-tax profit during the first half. Benchmark German bond yields rose to the highest in over 5 weeks on Tuesday after a higher than expected inflation reading and an ECB policymaker called on the bank to reduce its emergency bond purchases as soon as the next quarter. And Germany's 10-year yield, the benchmark for the euro area, rose 5 basis points to a high of negative 0.383%, the highest since July 22. Japanese shares reclaimed lost ground on Tuesday to the 11-month-long anomaly of closing lower on the last trading day of the month, helped by the stronger Asian peers and domestic political developments. The Nikkei share average climbed 1.08% to 28,089.54, closing above the 28,000 level for the first time since August 12th. The broader topics gained 0.54% to 1,960.70, and the China blue chips fell on Tuesday after data showed the services sector in the world's second biggest economy slumped into contraction, and as analysts noted that Beijing's scrutiny over online gaming would affect the long-term growth of the industry. At the close, the blue chip CSI 300 index ended 0.16% lower, with the consumer staples sector down 1.58% and the healthcare sub-index down 1.98%. South Korean stocks posted their biggest daily jump in more than 5 months on Tuesday, led by tech shares and strong buying for the foreign investors. The benchmark Kospi ended up 55.08 points, or 1.75%, at 3,199.27, marking its sharpest intraday gains since March 11th and extending gains to a third straight session. Australian shares to open lower on Wednesday, tracking weak cues from Wall Street after the US and Chinese economic data suggested slower growth ahead. The Australian mining and energy stocks are expected to drop due to lower commodity prices. Aussie investors now await the gross domestic product data, or GDP, for the second quarter, scheduled to be released on Wednesday. Bega Cheese, Endeavour Group, IRES and Treasury Wine Estates are a few companies that are going ex-dividend on Wednesday too. Crude oil prices fell ahead of the meeting of the Organisation of Petroleum exporting countries OPEC and its allies on Wednesday, and the Brent futures fell to $72.99 a barrel, while the WTI crude settled down at $68.50 a barrel. And the energy stocks such as Woodside Petroleum and Santos Limited could trade lower on Wednesday. Gold strengthened on Tuesday as the dollar weakened, and the spot gold was up 0.2% at US $1,814.42 per ounce. The US gold futures finished up 0.3% at $1,818.10. ASX listed gold stocks such as Northern Star Resources and Newcrest Mining could trade higher on Wednesday. The benchmark iron ore futures on the Dalian Commodity Exchange slipped 5% to 808 yuan a tonne. And the London Metal Exchange, copper rose 1.3% to $9,530 a tonne. Zinc was flat at $3,002. Lead fell 1.5% to $2,262, and tin surged by 1% to $33,900. And that's all for now, but do keep watching Kalkine TV for more market updates. This is Sage signing off.